Jack, it's great to see you again. Thank you for taking the time to chat to us again this month.
Lots of fun every time that I meet with you, Morne.
I love it. So, as we kind of teased the last time we spoke, on this quick session today, I really wanted to talk about all this noise and narrative around the economic downturn, and we're calling this one economic downturn. No problem, we've been here before. I think it's important that we remind people that despite the data that's coming out about economic contraction, both here in the UK and in the US, that most of us have in fact been here before. And the media seems intent on running this narrative that says we're going to be in a very long, very deep recession. So what I wanted to talk to you about today is really getting out in front of that message and reminding CEOs, entrepreneurs, business owners, sales leaders that there are best practices for selling in any economy. And when I was thinking about that, I recall seeing you speak a few months back on the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And I know that's a particular favorite of yours. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about, given the negative economic sentiment, I wanted you to talk a little bit about the distinction between a fixed and a growth mindset and why that's more relevant now than ever.
Well, as you know, Morne, the book Mindset, which is about 15 years old now, written by Carol Dweck, is in my top 5 books of all time. And what she basically says is that people come in one of 2 categories: a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. The beauty of it is you aren't destined to be in one or the other. You can choose to be in a fixed or growth mindset at any stage and at any time of your life. So, in an economy that is looking like it's going to push our backs to the wall and be more difficult than the one we've been experiencing for a decade or more, a fixed mindset person would look at that and woe is me. There's nothing I can do about it. My business is going to be negatively impacted. My financial strength is going to be weakened. My cash flow is going to be weakened. And they go to a negative, dark place. A growth mindset person says, okay, let's deal with the reality that it's going to be more difficult than it has been. But what is it that I can do that will make the difference and make me be at the top of the performers as opposed to just surrendering? And so a growth mindset is a person who's focused on that which they have control of. That's really one of the keys is, hey, rather than get upset about all of the things that you hear on the news, who always are always peddling bad news, disasters. We don't talk about all the planes that successfully took off and landed. We only talk about the one that crashed. And so a growth mindset person is fixated on the desired goal, the destination. What can I do? Focus on that which you have control over. So you know this, but for the listener and the viewer, I think it's important to understand, as an example, is that when the pandemic hit, we went into lockdown in March of 2020. I watched the speaker world collapse. They basically said, I'm out of business. The majority of speakers said, look, I'm in front of large groups of people and I travel to get there, most by plane. I can't get on a plane and I can't be in front of people. And so I'm broke. That's a fixed mindset. What I said was, the people out there in the sales and the CEO business owner world need me more than ever. How do we transition through this pandemic? And so I need to find a way to communicate with them and give them the tools to be successful. So the following month, I ended up having a professional group of people come in and build me a studio at home with all of the lights and cameras and all of the things that I needed in order to go and be virtual. Now that's interesting, because in March we locked down, in April we built the studio, and check this out. I set a Guinness World Record in June for the largest attendance for a virtual business conference of 21,261 people. And Morne, you know that my business actually went up during the pandemic because pre-pandemic, I limited the number of engagements I would do because I didn't want to be in hotels all the time. But when I was able to just do it from my home, instead of averaging 8 gigs a month, I averaged 15 to 17 gigs a month, and most of them were in the morning, and I could be on the golf course in the afternoon. Like, this is a beautiful thing. So I looked at that world quite a bit different than, if you will, my competitors. And I know we want to go quickly here, but let me give you just one other example because it's so pertinent to the world right now. In the beginning of this year, 30-year fixed rate interest rates on mortgages were right around 3%. In fact, we saw some 2 and change type of thing. Today, 11 months later, we're over 6%. An awful lot of fixed mindset people in that industry are saying, I got to go find work somewhere else. No one's going to do a mortgage loan at 6% plus. Now, I cut my teeth as a salesperson professionally in the mortgage business quite a long time ago, and 30-year fixed rates were 17.5%. And I watched the community of salespeople say, I got to go find something else to do. No one will do a loan at 17.5%. The growth mindset guy, who I am, said, well, people have to live somewhere. They don't have the cash to buy a home. Therefore, they're going to borrow money. And if there are fewer people to borrow from, that means more to me. And so I was able to generate more business rather than less business. And by the way, when the rates started going down to 12%, it was cause for a ticker tape parade. Does life get any better? It's 12%. And the people now are in the mindset of going, how am I going to be successful in a 6% market? It's all between our ears. That's 6 inches. We have to position it in a growth mindset versus fixed. Yep.
I remember you telling that story, and it gets me every time. And I think it's so important that people hear that now more than ever. But, I think that there's probably people watching this and thinking, well, Jack, that's great. You clearly came out of the womb fully formed with a growth mindset. I sort of recognize that I have a bit of a fixed mindset. How do I develop a growth mindset? How do I actually get from where I am to where I need to be?
Yeah, so, I think the best way for people to really grab a hold of things is by way of stories. So, that I'm a marathoner, and whether you refer to that as 42K or 26.2 miles, it's a long way. I've raced and completed 100 marathons. My most recent was a year ago, and I was 72 years old at the time and ran Athens Marathon. The thing that makes me crack up is I can't imagine running 26.2 miles. And yet I've done 100 marathons. So how does that work? Well, when I show up at a race, my only commitment to myself is show up on time. When the gun goes off, race, but all you need to do is do 1 mile. And when my watch clicks on and says you've done a mile, I then have a conversation for a moment with myself and say, could you do 1 more mile? And every time I ask the question, I'm going, well, I could certainly do a mile. It's just 26.2 seems just out of reach. So all of my marathons, I've run 1 mile 26 times, right? So how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. So I say, if you want to move from a fixed to a growth, choose a small goal. Choose something that you can see that, hey, I'm going to have to work to achieve it, but this one's doable, right? And go from there. I am a zero when it comes to technology. The idea of having a virtual studio and no one there to help me with all of the equipment, and what if the Zoom goes off or down, and I got an audience of thousands of people. What am I going, right? So I had to be taught how to spoon feed my way through this, but I was fixated on the ultimate goal. That's where I come from. So let me flip it back over to you.
Sure.
So as a professional, you've been 20 some years running sales teams, running businesses of your own. And during that 20 years, yeah, we've certainly seen downturns, the dot-com blow up, the 2008 financial meltdown, the pandemic. And so what have you learned about sales best practices in periods like that? I mean, what you've been in the heat of battle. I've been just on stage talking about it. So let me hear it from you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel that old, but yeah, I was there for the dot-com boom. That's actually quite frightening to think about. It's an interesting question. A client of mine asked me a similar question recently, Jack, and I had a little think about it, and we were chatting about it, and I said, you know what? There's a number of things. The first thing that comes to mind, and I've actually heard you speak on this topic, is when there's a downturn in the economy, all of a sudden, there's more sales talent available than there normally would be. However, a lot of companies make the mistake that they start to absorb salespeople, they don't recruit. And what do we mean by that? They have a look around and say, well, hold on, maybe there's some salespeople here that I can get for a good value, for a good price. And they go out and they just sweep up salespeople in the marketplace. The problem with that is that the best salespeople often get held onto by the companies, even in a downturn. So everybody who's available isn't necessarily worth having. What we tell our clients first and foremost is, in a downturn, bring a prospecting mindset to sales talent acquisition. And what does that mean? It means that we should always be looking. We should always be looking, because salespeople are not like buses. They don't run on a schedule. They don't show up when you expect them. They show up when they show up. Sometimes, you just mentioned it, when there's a change in, say, the downturn we had in 2008, there were some very good mortgage brokers that all of a sudden became available because that industry was badly affected. If we have the mindset that we're prepared to always look, and we're prepared to look outside of our industry, you're probably going to find that diamond in the rough that you've always been looking for. So there's going to be some opportunities. Then I would say that you should always also think about right-sizing the team that you have now. Not everybody who has a seat in your sales function right now deserves or earned that seat. There's that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. We're going to find out very quickly, when the economy contracts, who are the salespeople that have their mindset and the grittiness to keep winning even when things are tough. So we tell our clients to assess and evaluate, and there's some great tools out there for this. Evaluate the salespeople that you have and really figure out what's going to move the needle. Do they have the mindset? Do they have the grittiness? Or are they fair weather salespeople in your team? We also need to think about increasing the revenue per head. How do I get more juice out of the squeeze? Now, that starts with having the right people in the right seats. But then, as I've said, it also goes to whether you've got people with that mindset and that heart, the kind of salespeople that wake up in the morning and want to chew raw meat off the bone. If I have the kind of salespeople that the moment things get tough, they tell me, well, it's the economy, it's the inflation rate, it's the mortgage lending rates that have gone up. There's every excuse under the sun. Chances are those salespeople are not going to make it through an economic downturn. So once you've looked at your people, sorry, go on.
So let me just interrupt there, because there's something really, really important that I want to underscore, and that is that you're always looking for people. It has
Correct.
No bearing on what the market is like. A good people move in good markets and tough markets. The key is, are you allocating time to always be looking? So I'm going to use you, Morne, as a great example. I knew in my late 60s that I wasn't going to be speaking around the world on sales and sales management and culture until I was 100, right? At some point, I'm going to give up the stage. So I started a process about 7 years ago that said, I'm going to keep my eye out and look for somebody that I think would be a great guy for me to pass the baton to. And about 5 years ago, you and I came together when I was speaking in London, and you came up to me and said, hey, what do you got going on? That was really a great presentation. I learned a lot. Here's who I am. And we ended up having dinner together. And that was the beginning of a great relationship for the last 5 years. And during that relationship, I found out more and more about you and said, this is my guy. And we're in the process of me now transitioning out of that business and going to my new book, Life by Design. And so you, my friend, are a byproduct of me practicing what you just preached. I was always on the look, and I've had literally hundreds and hundreds of people approach me and say, hey, when you're ready to pass the baton, think about me. So there was a lot of people in the marketplace, but I was on the pursuit of where's the best talent, and that was your message just given.
I appreciate that, and that's a great example of this, always on mentality. And I think I dare say, just to take that example and take it a bit further, I think what helped you, Jack, make the decision to pass the baton to me is because you were really, really clear on what it is that you were looking for. And that's something else that we tell our customers. Get really clear on the talent that you're looking for, but also get super clear on who your ideal customer is. Because in a market that's contracting, I want to get the maximum return on investment for every marketing dollar spent. And that does not mean spray and pray. That means get really clear on what I'm looking for and invest the time, the money, and the energy into that. That's another best practice. And that goes for trying to find good sales talent, as well as trying to find that ideal customer. And then when you find them, then increase your share of wallet. If your average deal value is $5,000, why not make it 5.5 or 6 or 6.5 or 7? Why not add some complementary products and actually increase that transactional value that you've already paid for? And then something that I actually learned from you, which I've heard you speak on stage a number of times, which I tell clients all the time now, I said, when the market gets tough, there is going to be a temptation for you to be aggressive and to try and sell hard because you're looking for cash, you're looking for revenue. Don't do that. Do the opposite. Stop selling and help your prospects to buy. Prospects are going to get walls up. They're going to try and preserve their cash. They're going to be more selective about who they want to spend that money with, because they're also trying to, not give away everything that they have. And if you can be the salesperson of the company that says, you know what, I'm going to help you buy, even if it's not from me, that kind of mentality counterintuitively will win you more customers than telling your salespeople, go out there and be super aggressive and don't take no for an answer, which is not what any prospect wants to hear.
All great points. And the hardest sale, and we all have to remember this, inclusive of me, the hardest sale that you ever make is the first one, because you had to overcome this hurdle called trust. At the end of the day, selling is the transfer of trust. Once someone agrees to do business with you and you've earned their trust, then your point that you just made, go wide and go deep with your existing. It's easier to sell more to someone who trusts you than to break the door down in getting that new relationship underway. I'm not suggesting that you stop prospecting. I just want to reinforce your point that there are more sales available with your existing trusted clientele than you running around in a panic, knocking on a lot more doors.
Absolutely. And actually on that point, Jack, I wanted to touch on, maybe some sage advice that you have for the salespeople. We have, you and I both, the people that follow our content is a mixture of business owners, entrepreneurs, but there's also a large number of sales professionals, so people that like to hear you speak and that like to follow our content. And I'm sure that there's a number of salespeople right now that's listening to this and saying, well, yeah, this all sounds great, and you guys are hypothesizing about what we should be doing, but I'm out there knocking on doors, making the calls, and the decision makers that I'm coming up against are already saying, you know what, Morne, thank you so much for that pitch, but I'm already seeing a slowdown in my business. And I don't have the cash, or I don't have the confidence in my forward order book to invest in what you're selling right now. We're just going to make do with what we have. What advice would you give salespeople to overcome or manage that particular objection?
Clearly that is going on right now. There's no question about it. So if you're a salesperson, I don't want you to think that you are uniquely finding yourself in that situation. It is pervasive. Yeah. So let's go directly to it. How do you deal with it? The first order of business, and I have several points that I'd make here. The first order of business is be empathic. Understand where that person's coming from. Put yourself in their shoes. And how would you feel, and what would you like from someone calling on you if you were in that situation where they're saying, hey, I'm already being negatively impacted, I'm uncomfortable moving forward. Let's role practice what it would be like to be in their shoes and feel that, so that you can then approach them in a more understanding and empathic way. The second point is, instead of selling, and you've already brought that up, I'm going to ask how I could be of help. Is there some way that I could be more helpful to them in whatever they're being confronted with? Literally, I will take whatever products or services that I'm representing, and I'll leave them in the car. I'll leave them in the office. All I want to be is a resource. If it means that I invest a couple, 3 hours with this person on a weekly basis in some way that has nothing to do with what I represent as a product or service, I am building a deep, deep relationship. That's not going to garner me a sale that day, but in time, it is going to garner me a significant share of wallet. In effect, what I'm talking about is being a partner. Be a partner rather than there's the prospect and the salesperson. Sit on the same side of the table, not across the table from them, and find a way to be that partner. So another idea there is, can you loosen up the terms under which you sell your product or service? Because maybe it's cash flow, and maybe we have some wiggle room in our ability to not take it all up on the front end. So I'm going to use my CEO coaching business as an example. As you know, about 5 years ago, I started doing CEO coaching around the world over the phone. And when I take on a client, I view myself as literally an owner of the business. I tell my clients, there are times where you're going to wonder, who owns this business? This guy sounds like he's the owner and I'm the owner, right? But that's my style of coaching. When I am confronted with a client that comes to me and says, Jack, your advice has been just incredibly worthwhile and powerful, but I'm stuck. We're cutting back expenses here and there and throughout the company because of things in the economy. And I'm in good faith. I want to show the rest of the team that I'm falling on the sword as well. So I'd like to pause our coaching relationship. And I will respond and say something along the lines of, I hear you, I support it, I understand it, but I don't want you to not have the resource called Jack Daly during the most difficult times. I would be a bad partner if I were to do that. So let's not worry about you paying me. We're just going to put it in a deferral bucket. I'm not worried about the deferral bucket. And I'm going to continue coaching you at the level that I've been coaching. And when we work through whatever it is that we are being challenged with economically, and you raise your hand and say, hey, I can get back into the norm, I'll be ready to do that. And then we'll take a look at whatever was deferred and we'll decide, like all of it, a portion of it. But let's stay focused on me being your partner and helping you with that situation. So that's really how I approach all of my sales life. I am empathic and want to help in any way that I can. I am not a short tail person. I'm a long tail person. I'm a relationship guy, and I'll figure my way around my own personal cash flow situation. What I have to do is prioritize my customer and be there for them. Now, I'm going to tell you that when you take that kind of a mindset to your business will blossom not just in tough times, but imagine what it's like in good times. Imagine what referral rate you end up experiencing. Imagine what your brand is experiencing in terms of the marketplace, how you are differentiating yourself from everyone in the marketplace. Now, I'm using me as an example of that, but I'm telling you that this is the way I've operated in every business my whole life. And as a result, the success has taken place. So, like, be a partner, be empathic, see if you can help in some way. So we just dealt the answer to that question to a salesperson. Now I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to ask you, what advice do you give to the business owner, the CEO, in that kind of environment where their salespeople are confronted with that? What words of wisdom? Because you're working with business owners every day in your business.
Absolutely. And I think the first thing that I'd have to say is the business owner has to support what you've just described. That's key. There's that great story of Rick Ross, who took over Dataflex, and how he did that. And the story goes, it's a long story, but the story goes that he figured out the 5 questions that every salesperson should ask a prospect. And if they got 5 yeses, they could do the deal. They could do the deal without coming back to head office and asking for permission. If the client said, I would buy, but I need you to change the payment terms, or I need you to give me a little bit of leeway over here, or maybe change this. We live in this incredibly fast-paced, instant decision, instant gratification culture, where Amazon will pick something and deliver it to you within 2 hours, where I can flip through 150 cable television channels with my remote control, and we're getting these instant dopamine hits all the time. And yet a lot of companies out there are trying to sell by saying to the salesperson, if it's within this box, then it's okay. If it's not, come back and talk to us and we'll figure it out. And salespeople are taking 2, 3, 4, 5 days to get back to prospects because they're not empowered to make decisions. And if we're telling salespeople to go out there and behave like partners, but their companies are not supporting them, it's not going to work. So the first thing that business owners need to do is recognize that you have to, and I'm going to use this term cautiously, but you have to weaponize your salespeople by empowering them, by saying to them, let's figure out the 5 things that you need to ask that's aligned with our company core values, aligned with our financial goals, aligned with our brand, our reputation. And if you can get yeses to all of this, do the deal. Build that relationship and do that deal, so that you have salespeople out there that are fully empowered to actually make great decisions, build great relationships, and bring in that revenue. And how do we do that? We do that by first and foremost making sure that we have right people, right seats. We have to be super clear about what our core values are, why it is that we're selling, what our brand is, what our financial goals are. We have to be really clear about who our ideal customer is, because you want to build those relationships with ideal customers, not just anyone. And then, and this is something that I just want to end off with, because we're going to talk about this next time actually. Once you've done all of these things, once you've figured out how to empower your salespeople, what are the questions they should ask, who your ideal customer is, etc., put it in the playbook. Put it in the playbook, right? There's not 2,600 best ways to do something, as you famously say from stage. There's one or two. Figure it out, put it in the playbook. Why? Because then your sales manager can show all of your salespeople how to do it. And what happens in an economic downturn, what we talked about at the beginning? The gap between your best performance and your worst performance gets wider because the best performers figure it out and the worst performers don't. And if you want that gap to be smaller and you want more consistent performance across your sales team, put it in the playbook and coach it every single day.
Hey, Morne, let me also add one more thing to the empowerment process. In these times, when we're asking our salespeople and encouraging them to make decisions in the field on the spot, when we find as a business owner or a CEO, we're finding salespeople that are successfully doing that, we need to recognize them in front of everyone and show, celebrate those successes so that the rest of the salespeople feel liberated, because it's going the extra mile, and maybe we're not accustomed to going the extra mile. It's getting outside of the box, and there are a number of people who are not comfortable getting outside of the box. But if we make it an event and we make them heroes for doing those types of things, we will get more people to go and do that. That will elevate the performance of the overall firm. Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to next time we're together to going into that sales playbook. People, you've heard me say this before, but people and companies tend to underperform to their capabilities because we rush to the urgent at the expense of the important. And so you and I both see this all the time. Hey, I'm so confronted with the realities of today. There's no way that I can take the time right now to go address this thing called a playbook, no matter how good it is. And so, I push you back and say, hey, let's think about any sport that you follow. And can you imagine the coach saying, well, I'm just going to tell the whole team to just go out there and see if they can get open and I'll pass it to them. I mean, it's just lunacy, but we're doing that in too many businesses today. So you have worked with companies and you've done that playbook in relatively short order. There are ways to get something that's there, right? Maybe not the ultimate, right?
Absolutely. And something's going to be better than nothing. Let's face it.
For sure. Absolutely.
Well, I look forward to that conversation, Jack. I know that's a particular topic of expertise for you. I'd love for you to tell the John Wooden story that you told me a few months ago. I think our listeners and our viewers will really enjoy that. So I'm going to leave them with that little tease. And I look forward to speaking to you in a few weeks' time and having a nice, positive and pragmatic message for everybody as we run into Christmas, if you can believe it.
I can believe it since I'm seeing it in all the stores right now.
Well, it's great to see you again, Jack. Thank you so much for your time. A little bit longer session than normal, but I think we both get excited about these kinds of things because there is a lot of positivity to be had. And I hope that the people listening to today feel a little bit more drawn to a growth mindset, and we'll take that into the months ahead as we experience whatever it is we're going to experience.
Yeah, we do like these things to be shorter, but I got to tell you, once we get started, we're on a roll and we got to go. The content was really rich, and I hope people will learn from it and take action.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jack. Good to see you.
See you, bud.